All right, welcome back to the webinar series, A Multidimensional Approach to Building Your Personal Brand. Joining me is a very special guest. He is the owner of Twin Bear Management, the CEO, the founder, everything under the sun with his company. His name is Tony Caporale. He's had an interesting life as far as his career has gone. He's gone in many different paths. So, Tony, before you tell us about those paths and kind of what you've been involved in outside of just Twin Bear, just tell me how you're doing, man.
I'm doing great, man. We're making it through this lockdown segment of our lives and, learning more ways to digitally communicate has been great. I know, this type of format here has been growing for us, and it's just been a great way to stay connected. But for the most part, kind of love hanging out at home, and finding a different way to work. It's been great.
Absolutely, man. And, to follow up on that, the Zoom age, I guess we could call this, the age of the pandemic has really changed a lot for businesses and hiring processes and things like that. What have you noticed has been the biggest change as far as, the way you would normally go about hiring, interviewing, reviewing resumes, things like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. The thing that we've noticed the most, I'm involved in two businesses now. My wife is a doctor. So 2 years ago, we started a private practice for her. The first time. She's been in medicine for 25 plus years. And but I'll go back to Twin Bear first. We've noticed the biggest change is there's no personal interaction. I've got a team of about 8 people. We're all working from home. We're all working remotely and have been since late February, early March. We've kind of cleaned out our offices. We no longer, are working in an environment where we can kind of, enjoy the back and forth between, the physical connection. So anytime we want to have a gathering, we got to do one of these things, a Zoom meeting or a G chat or something. And for the clients, we love, we love hosting meetings. We love getting, new potential clients in our boardroom, in our conference room. It's got a great view of downtown Atlanta. We got a great common area with, coffee and snacks and stuff. And that was always a big part of, getting to know a client and having them get to know us. So that part's been interesting. That part's been a big change. And then as far as the hiring goes, we've probably, we've hired about, on the Twin Bear side, we've hired about 3 people using the digital forum, where we haven't met them. You can't see them face to face yet. Mm-hmm. And then in the medical side, we've gone through about 5 or 6 or 7 different interview processes until we actually physically hired a couple of new folks to work in our office there. But all of it has been remote. All of it has been, through this Zoom format, and it's really great that you can connect. But there is that element of in touch or in person, kind of feeling that you're missing. But all in all, it's you've adapted, and this thing has really closed the gap.
Does having the digital interview like this, and this might be a good first wave interview process even after the pandemic kind of lets up and things kind of go back to normal or as normal as they can be. What have you noticed, or has anything changed in what you look for in the interview process with the digital age and the digital platforms?
Yeah, it really does. So the first round is we posted a job is available. And so the first round of applicants, if you will, it's kind of a broad scope of, who fits the criteria of what you're looking for. And as we narrow it down, we find that, in today's world, whether you like it or not, you leave a pretty clear digital footprint, that we call it. That's easily traceable. It's easily, searched. You don't think about the things in your social media feed when you're, from one perspective to another. You could do, if you're a person that likes to do a lot of giving and volunteering, and you kind of share that personality versus on the other side of that spectrum, where you kind of think the light is not on, the camera's not on when you're out partying and you're, throwing shots back or whatever. employers are looking for that stuff, and we certainly do. We get down to the finalists of who we're about to decide to hire, and we absolutely look at their Instagram, we look at their Facebook, we look at their Twitter feed, we look at their, Snapchat if they have that. I mean, we basically do a pretty good cleansing or a good broad look at who they present themselves as, and it really has become helpful.
Absolutely. I mean, social media plays such a big part in everything now. It's, just going through what we're going through right now. It's been a huge eye-opening experience for everybody. And social media without the human-to-human interaction has been a great way and a bad way if you look, depending on what end of the spectrum you fall on, of
Sure.
communicating. So I would venture to say, and I would agree with you, that that's become a big part of evaluating a candidate. So I want to ask you about networking and figuring out like how to navigate that both digitally, in person. What are some good strategies you would tell, I would say, high school age kids, going into early college, or even kids in college that are, close to graduating? What would you tell them about networking both digitally and non-digitally?
Well, I think it's important. One of the things that was, I've been in social media since 2005, so I've been doing it a very long time. And one thing, there has been a shift in it. There has been a change, from the evolution of just, of anything really.
Mm-hmm.
The social media age in its infancy and through its first decade, was very transparent. It was very authentic. The one thing you could count on was, if someone was posting some things that weren't absolutely true, you had what we call mavens pointing that out. They would absolutely call you on your your non-correct information or your exaggeration of a particular whatever. Now it's become it's become a very high marketing channel. It's become a network. Much like TV and radio used to be, you can pay to get your voice out there. You can pay to get your brand out there, even if you're a single person or if you're a business or whatever. But the thing that remains true is that it used to, before social media happened and before social media grew to what it is now, you kind of were what you said your brand was, right? So if you bought the biggest billboard and you paid the most money to have your ad on TV and you, had the loudest radio commercial, people would tend to think that you were the biggest and the best because that's just what you said and that's what they had to accept. So now it's no longer what you say your brand is, it's what people say about your brand. And that's both in business and in, personality. So what I would say to people, high school, college, even adults, young adults looking for that, doing that job search, be prepared for that stuff to be looked at. So when you post, you're presenting your image, you're painting a picture that tells a story. And that story can be searched, that story can be reviewed. And if you're okay with that being reviewed by the people who are about to hire you, then you should be fine. But just know that if you're posting, someone can see it. It's up there forever. It's up there for a long, long time. I mean, you can delete it, but people, we know that the digital footprint is a thing that's hard to erase if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
Think about that before you get into it. So if you're acting cool and your behavior is solid, and you're representing your true self, I think that's probably the best advice. Just represent your true self, in your posting. If you're a guy that's opinionated and has a lot to say about a particular topic, that's okay because it does give everybody the option to publish, and that's kind of the double-edged sword, if you will. You can have a strong opinion. You can show graphic images. You can show great philanthropy. All of it, I think, applies.
And that's very good advice because I think, kids, especially high school kids, aren't exactly still, even though they've grown up completely in the digital and social media age, they're still not completely aware of what their digital footprint looks like and how it impacts. Because I don't
Yeah,
think, what one of the things we need to do, as high school educators and even middle school and elementary school at that, because it's starting to kind of leak down in those age ranges as well, is it's just become more uh, in tune and get better at teaching them, kind of looking beyond the scope of, okay, I'm a junior and I'm going to post what's on my mind right now, and not really think much past the moment they post. And so
sure,
I think that's something that this generation still needs to do a better job at learning, and our generation and even generations back beyond my generation needs to do a better job of helping guide them through that process. So um, I mean, that's all great stuff on social media, though. I mean, I think it's becoming a big tool for evaluations and potential job seekers, and people need to know that. So,
sure.
but let's walk it back because I want to talk about your experiences, because you've been involved in a lot of different things, and I want to talk about kind of that, creating that plan for yourself, creating the goals, creating the visions for what you want to do with your life. And I want to kind of pick your brain to figure out how you got from when you graduated high school to where you're at right now, and kind of what guided you through all of that stuff, and what you, if there was anything you did, or if there was an epiphany, or what took you through your journey as far as what you've experienced.
Sure. Um, well, it's true. I have done a lot of things. I've reinvented myself several times along the path of getting to. I'll be 55 this month. Um, it's I think the easiest thing, the easiest answer. There's a lot of details, obviously, but the easiest answer is follow your passion. Follow your passion. Believe in yourself. Um, don't let others tell you you can't do something just because they don't agree with it. Um, coming out of high school, or actually in high school, I thought sports was going to be an avenue for me. I was fairly athletic. I had some success at the high school level. Um, I had some options for college that I didn't take because in my sophomore year, I began. I found a passion for playing drums, and I had played, kind of noodled with drums kind of all my life because my father did, and he had a drum set under the house that we pulled out and kind of put together, and found some friends who we put a band together. And my senior year in high school, we were the rock band at Six Flags Over Georgia for the summer of 1983,
Oh wow.
and that meant we would leave school at about noon. So we'd go in and take some morning classes. We'd leave school about noon, and we had to be on stage at 2 o'clock at Six Flags. And we played from 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock, 5 days a week, and it was spectacular. I mean, for a high school guy, it was amazing. So that kind of got my juices flowing, kind of got my passion started, in the music business. And then, soon, while during that process, I found the business side of music. Just by being the guy that had the sound system. I had the truck that used to carry the sound system back and forth to the shows. Um, and then I found that other people needed to borrow my sound system from time to time. So I ended up renting it to them, and kind of, found a way that then I was kind of introduced to the world of production rental through a friend of mine. It's a great story. Short, I'll make it short. When I was 17, one of the amplifiers in my sound system had kind of blown up, and so I needed to repair it. So I took it to a repair shop in Atlanta. So it was one of my first ventures into finding this repair shop in Atlanta. And next door to this repair shop was a sound rental company that rented, sound systems to big concerts and things like that. And so it was called Seriously Sound, and the name of it alone kind of kind of intrigued me. And so I went in, met the folks in the office there, and then about a month later, the band I was in was doing a show where we didn't have enough sound equipment, so we rented some sound equipment from this guy that I had met, back at that place called Serious and Sound. His name was David Lowell.
Yeah.
And so I went back to talk to him, and his pricing was, I certainly couldn't afford what the big boys were paying. And so he cut me a deal. He said, look, I'll give you a deal if you come and pick it up, you set it up, and then you pack it up and bring it back to me tomorrow morning. It has to be back to me tomorrow morning at 8:00, because all this gear that I'm giving you for a really good price, I'm only doing because ordinarily it'd be sitting in the truck overnight, not doing anything, waiting to go to this gig the next morning at 8:00 in the morning. So he says, you have to have it back here. So I go get the gear. We set it up. We do the show. My band had a great night, and we packed it all up, and I brought it back the next morning. And he said, did you wrap up all these cables? And I said, yeah. He said, you pack these cases back like this? I said, yeah. He said, this looks amazing. Do you want a job? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, yeah, I would love a job. He said, can you start today? And I said, okay, yeah. He said, all right, well, take this gear down to this address, do the same thing you just did last night, but with another band.
Wow.
And that's how I got started in the sound business. And so that led to touring. That led to meeting a bunch of people inside the business. I found a knack for audio, so I became a sound engineer after being a crew guy for many years. Just traveling to shows, unloading and loading trucks. I mean, that was the gig for several years, and then that led into understanding what production management was, and then production management led into production company management. That took me to Las Vegas. I worked for a production company in Las Vegas for about 12 years. And then managing touring got me interested in artist management. So artist management was the next step of that thing. And then that's where it kind of came into, let me fast forward now. That was, I was in Vegas from 89 to 2000. Oh, I played golf for 4 years, trying to be a golf professional. Slipped that in there for 4 years because parallel to all the stuff that I was doing in Vegas, I was playing amateur golf, which was very exciting, very intriguing. And I had a lot of success at it at that level. So the buddy of mine who was teaching me how to play golf said, you should play golf for a living if you want to. So I sold my house, I bought an RV, and I traveled around the country for 4 years trying to play golf for a living. That did not go as planned. There are some really great golfers out there trying to do that who've really done it most of their lives. And that's really what I learned out of that venture was I started about 15 or 20 years too late. But it was a blast. I wouldn't change it for the world. But anyway, I think it all happened for a reason because it brought me back to Atlanta. It put my path in connection with Ed Roland and the band Collective Soul. Collective Soul, as you know, huge multi-platinum rock band. Mm-hmm. Have 9 #1 hits and 20-something songs at radio. I mean, they're great. It's strange about Collective Soul. It's like everybody's a Collective Soul fan. They just don't know it.
Oh yeah.
They know all the songs, but nobody knows who they are. It's weird.
Yeah, it's.
But anyway, so then so our path crossed in 2004 when they were kind of breaking free from the big record label deals, and they were going independent, as they called it. They were going to release their own record. And there was a thing happening at about the same time called MySpace, if you remember that. MySpace was kind of the first.
Are you in my top 8?
Right. Napster was happening. File sharing was just beginning. And what was actually happening, if you kind of pull back a little bit, was the internet was becoming humanized, right? Mm-hmm. So prior to that moment, or prior to that era, if you will, the internet was a place you could go and get information, but there wasn't much of a two-way conversation happening. Right. Companies had websites that were basically information. They were big pamphlets. They had videos on them. They had slideshows or whatever, but there wasn't a conversation happening until MySpace. And so at the time, I was the MySpace kind of manager for the band because the band didn't understand it. They didn't know what it was. And so I was the voice of the band on MySpace, and that's what kind of launched my understanding into social media. And that was in 2005. And so as a result of having this conversation with the fans, they were privy to access that they'd never had before. So they had something exclusive, and exclusivity sells products. It allows you into this space that only the VIPs can have, or if you're in the know, or so to speak. So it kind of creates that thing of where people want to belong to something. And so we saw right away that we sold more tickets, we sold more merch, we sold more records. If we showed up and did a radio show, for a town that was playing the music and they wanted to do a little acoustic set or something at the club down the street, instead of having 45 or 60 people showed up, there were 600 people that showed up.
Oh, wow.
And so it was and we kind of all tied it back to, if you were having this experience or giving this experience to your fan base, they would support you. There's a part of that they want to be involved in. So then that turned into how to make social media work for businesses. Businesses have fans just like bands do. So we got the opportunity to put something together for a national restaurant brand. And the CMO told me point blank, he said, I want you to do for me what you did to Collective Soul. He was a big Collective Soul fan, and he had been a part of that fan process. And so that was our first kind of launch into social media for businesses. And then so that, again, to tie into your question, I know this has been a long answer, but it's about following your passion. It's about, taking that risk, betting on yourself, believing in yourself that you can do it, as long as you have a clear vision and a plan. Clear vision and plan, and you got to execute the strategy and stick to the to the benchmark that you set for yourself. You have to keep propelling it forward. And that's really, I think, the best advice people gave to me, and I'm happy to share it now.
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate you coming on to do so, and I think it's following your history of kind of where you started. Like, hey, I just did what I was supposed to do, and here I am. Several years later, I'm touring with a huge rock band, and being not only their sound engineer, but their manager and their social media manager, and just kind of getting more and more responsibility as far as that goes. So I imagine each step of the way, I imagine each of your goals and your direction probably changed a little bit when you realized, hey, I'm good at this. Okay, I'm gonna take this avenue. You were good at packaging up sound equipment, so you did that for a little bit. And then you go, okay, well, I'm good at making the sound, and you're just following your strengths, and your strengths change. And that's that's something that that people don't realize, is that once you have a goal, that goal is allowed to be malleable and reshaped any way you want, based on what you find through your searching through your strengths. Hey, I'm like for me, I'm really good at video editing, so I took a detour. I'm detouring back to maybe getting a podcast. I've got something in the works for that. So, I've kind of, I notice I feel like I'm pretty good on the microphone. So I'm gonna go that way. And I realize that, I'm good at multiple things. It's okay to pursue each of those avenues. And I think that's something that in your goal setting, things like that, you need to realize that is okay. That is not, you don't need to say, okay, well, I'm pretty good at sales. It's comfortable. I don't really care about it, but it's a job. And I think too many people get stuck in that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get maybe detoured by the fact that it seems overwhelming. I heard an expression a long time ago, you just got to go where the flowers bloom. It's like, you're planting I want to plant a tomato garden or an herb garden, and I just can't seem to make it work. But man, these daisies and these, roses are doing fantastic, so maybe I should grow those instead of, fighting my way through something that I'm having a struggle with. I think it's a fine line too, though, between understanding, Twin Bear became an umbrella company because as an independent contractor, when I was being a sound engineer, I was being a production manager, I was being an event manager, so we were putting concerts together, supplying productions for those concerts, providing management for the bands who were playing some, the concerts, and then having marketing and advertising strategies through social media. It became, I put Twin Bear together because I was invoicing so many different people with so many different, services, and it was confusing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And from a business perspective, and a I guess a business structure for taxes and all that stuff, Twin Bear was created to do music, media, and management. Those were the three pillars that we focused on. And so I think identifying what it is that you do is just as important as, focusing on having the courage and the take the no fear of taking the risk to do it.
Right. And I think that where people get trapped in these type of careers and things like that is they, to go back on your analogy with the gardens, they struggle with the tomatoes, but their daisies and roses are blooming really well. Well, I think what people do is they throw out the tomatoes and never revisit the tomatoes, and they just stay over here. And then they're like, oh, this is nice, but I really want tomatoes. And they never, like, I failed, so I can't really go back, which I think, I think I feel like what you've done is you've always kind of gone to the daisies and the roses, but you've always kind of cultivated the tomatoes as you went, so that tomatoes eventually could be part of your garden. And so I think building a vast garden of many different skills will lend you some flexibility. And I really like that, what you've done as far as that goes, and really integrating all of your strengths into one umbrella of a company. I think that's, that's definitely not the path for everybody. But it has seemed, if you can take the risk, I would say go for it. If you can, and especially now within the COVID period, you have flexibility to take those risks. I think coming out of college and high school, I think, why not? Why not take that risk? Take some side things to help kind of keep you afloat, but cultivate those tomatoes. Let the daisies support you for a little while, and then eventually just blend it all together. And so,
something else needs to be said, I think, too, that you just made me think of it is, and it sounds cliche, but it's so true. Learn from your mistakes.
Oh yeah.
I mean, because you didn't, because you weren't successful growing the tomatoes, doesn't mean you don't know how. It just means you don't know how yet.
Exactly. It's called a growth mindset.
Yeah, so you have to learn that, I watered them too much. That's the reason that's the reason they wouldn't do it, or that I didn't have enough whatever in the soil, or I didn't have, And so if you seek that, you can learn from your mistakes. They're right there, and you'll make 100 of them, man. They're going to be, some of the mistakes that I've made, I thought the company was going to go under, because of the mistakes that I made, as the CEO, and said, nope, this is the direction we're taking. This is the money we're going to spend. And man, it was just a, colossal failure, but it didn't end it. It didn't, we pivoted. You have to find another way. You kind of figure it out. Yeah. But learn from the mistakes, and the mistakes will be, there'll be several of them, but they're all a gift.
So before we wrap, for kids coming out of high school, mostly, maybe the age demographic we've been kind of referencing this whole time.
Sure.
What are probably in your mind the three most important, like, personal qualities that they need to possess in this new job market?
I would say present your true self. That's the one thing I would take away. Be honest, because they will always find out that if you're not, just be honest, present your true self, and be enthusiastic. What an employer, I've employed in the last, Twin Bear's been in business for almost 12 years now. And in my life of running a business or running a tour or whatever, I mean, I've employed, thousands of people. I'll take an enthusiastic guy who doesn't know what he's doing over somebody who thinks he knows what he's doing and is not enthusiastic, right? It just,
Right.
there's this thing that an employer wants to see, that you're eager to learn and you're eager to get it right,
Right.
no matter what. If the job that he asks you to do is taking you into your lunch hour, so what? Work through your lunch hour. If it takes you past 5 o'clock and you don't have anything else to do, give him that time. Show him that you're interested in getting it right. And I think that's something that we struggled with all of our new hires recently. We found that they came in, they presented something that was absolutely, it seemed like a great match. We bring them on, and they are clearly not that person they presented themselves to be, and they had terrible attitudes. So it was just it was kind of eye-opening, because it's I think that's something that if you're a high school student, a young college student, find some passion. And if you're just getting a job, it's okay to just get a job and earn some money, because that gives you it teaches you the discipline of showing up.
Right. And they'll never deny work experience. So, Tony, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge, sharing your experiences, and things like that. That would, I want to deep dive more into some of your sound stuff on a later date.
Sure.
More specifically for our audio unit for our AV2 class. So that would be another good avenue to go down as far as live event audio production, stuff like that. So I definitely want to have you back for sure. What was the point of all that? So I appreciate you. I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon.
Corey, thanks, man. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, man.